have any? I'm trying to find my minutes. My notebook exploded on me here, guys. Give me a second. Oh yeah, these were Lisa's.
Yep.
Good minutes. Anybody have any comments on the regular meeting, the April 9th? Sites, financing, survey.
I move that they
Pretty
be approved
comprehensive,
as
yeah.
submitted.
I second.
All in favor? Or-
Aye.
And then, do we actually have to approve the special meeting minutes? We never-
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a April 24th special meeting, which was a visit to Salisbury. And Don
Kind of brief. Sorry.
got it down to its essence. It's almost sort of haiku, these minutes, aren't they?
Yeah.
Nine words, but that's good. But everybody was there, right? Anybody on the committee? We were all?
I said,
Oh,
I
yeah,
wasn't
Betsy.
feeling well.
Yeah, it's too
No,
bad.
I had gone earlier. I didn't
You
go
weren't
to
there
that
either?
one.
Oh,
No.
okay, but you've been there.
I've been there.
Yeah, that was my
the
second.
first time we went.
That's good. And there's actually a follow-up. So anyway, should we approve anybody have any changes to make? Somebody want to make a motion to approve those?
I motion to approve those minutes.
Second,
Second.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I might as well go right into this, unless there are any additions to the agenda. Anybody? No? All right, so I'll just read this letter from Mr. Boyer because it spoke to an issue about the O&M. Somebody asked a question about O&M, operations and maintenance. And
Mr. Boyer is,
he was Bill, the guy who
Grounds
was
for-
speaking to us,
oh,
I believe.
At Salisbury School, he's the head
I
of
just
the
thought we
plant.
should tell everybody. who
Himself.
he
Oh,
is.
you mean his actual title? William F. Boyer, Director of Buildings, Grounds, and Safety, Salisbury School. And he actually is the one who has the daily oversight down there, right? He checks in and,
He's in charge of the whole place,
He's in
and there was
charge.
also a technician there, so there's two people.
okay, so one was a technician and one was
Yeah.
Bill, okay. Yeah. So, the question about O&M. Following up on the tour of our wastewater treatment facility, I reviewed the expense report to determine the cost to operate the facility. For the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018, $85,413 was charged to the wastewater treatment facility account. In addition to this number, it is estimated that electricity cost another $14,500. While we do not account for the labor expended by the school's tradesmen in monitoring and servicing the facility, an additional $25,000 in labor is a reasonable estimate. So I think that my only question about this was, your number was 100,000. This is 125,000. So is that a significant number, or is that plus or minus kind of thing?
It's plus or minus kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think Bill's being a little conservative there with some of his numbers too,
Okay.
so. And it's a bigger
So
facility
these-
also.
Yeah, the Salisbury plant also services 500 people
Right.
and food, so I think that's an important thing. That facility, what was the flow? The flow was double or triple what
Yeah, it's about
you're estimating West Cornwall?
22,000, 25,000 gallons a day in that range.
Yeah, but double or triple what West Cornwall.
Yeah. And a lot of the, the energy costs is obviously a large number. And so energy is directly related to the flow. So if your flow is half or 2/3, then you cut your electricity by that much as well.
And a lot of the rest of the costs probably will be pumping the solids and things.
Yeah, that's a pretty standard cost for the pumping. The biggest cost really usually is the labor.
Yeah.
And they have an operator that they've hired.
So do they estimate that, or are they actually able, the labor expense, we do not account for it? So estimate, so they don't.
They estimate, and those are not, that's not the guy, that estimate is not for the operator. That's for, like, the person that was there on the tour, John, he's not the operator. The operator's not there. The operator's a contract guy.
Right,
But John is an operator, but that's not what his function is at the school. He's a maintenance worker. So the $25,000 is for the maintenance guys to assist in doing things at the plant as needed.
did he say 3 hours a day or 3 hours a week? It was 3 hours, I thought I heard him say somebody is expected
I
to
think
be.
it's 3 hours a
A
day.
day, right, okay. And that's 7 days a week?
No, 5 days. It might not even be 5 days. I'd have to check with their permit, but the DEP's gotten much better over the years about allowing these plants of certain design to have less need for the operator to just be sitting there doing nothing. You know, watching the dials move.
But you're comfortable with the numbers?
Yes.
You're floating around, and, I mean, as we get closer, or if we get closer to a Board of Finance study, then you really have to hammer out that kind of thing, for sure, within a parameter.
Can I ask Steve a question?
Sure.
Okay, Steve, I mean, there are things, you know, I mean, there are different ways that people report expenses on different lines in their budget. So what about things like the filter replacements, which I guess are pretty expensive, right?
Yes.
So we don't know whether that's included in their figure or whether they put that on their capital expense line in their budget at Salisbury School. And we don't know whether the permit fees, do they go in their administration line, or do they have a regulatory line? I mean, we don't really know some of these things of whether or not they're included in the estimates. I mean, there's also the license and certification fees, continuing education, all those kinds of things. How do they report those fees? And I mean,
Yeah, that's just-
when we went up to Hillsdale, I mean, you know, the guy said, whatever you estimate for O&M, double it, because that's probably be closer to what it's gonna be. So if we're looking at 125, we're looking at $250,000 a year in O&M.
Well, I think
that's
also
quite
we
a-
can, once we decide what's going on, if we find equivalent installations, then we can narrow down these costs at a later time.
Right, I mean,
Because
that-
there are other places that have similar situations. And it's,
yeah, that really speaks to my comment, which is, at some point, we will have to get much more precise about all this, but
Well-
tonight's not the night.
No, you
As long as you're feeling comfortable about the number.
Yeah, you haven't picked the technology or anything at this point, so
Yeah.
we've looked at several technologies, the Salisbury School is one
Right,
brand of technology in this, so.
okay. So,
Also, Todd, I
Yeah.
didn't get any response from you on my thing. If we have this trip
About
planned
Kent?
to Saybrook, what about stopping? You know, especially if we're either traveling on the same bus or following each other in cars. What
Right,
about
well,
a trip to,
that's on the
South Kent.
agenda? Yeah, so this is the next step, so let's move to item 1 on the agenda, because this is about trips, informational
Day
trips.
Yes, so I've talked to the people in Saybrook, and what they are talking about is having a operator and someone from the municipality sewer, water pollution control authority come down and meet us at the Kohl's Shopping Center in Saybrook at 10 o'clock in the morning on the 23rd. Now, I tried to get the bus, but the bus was already reserved on the dates that Saybrook could make it as far as their operator. They were already booked with medical appointments, so we can't do the bus. We'll have to carpool down there. It's a pretty easy trip down there. You just get on Route 9, and it's right off Route 9, right after you go underneath or over Route 95. So it's not a heavy traffic thing, but it will take most of the day to do that, because what I'd like to do is meet with them at the shopping center at 10 o'clock, and that will probably take half an hour or something like that to go through the installation there. And the second stop would be at the Water's Edge Conference Center Resort, which I visited this month, just to try to see to meet with the people from the municipalities to see which systems are somewhat applicable to what we're trying to do. And what's interesting about the Water's Edge Resort is that their plant, which again is quite a bit bigger than what we're thinking of doing, is in the right underneath their restaurant, which is in a very nice restaurant overlooking the Long Island Sound. And that particular place is an old inn that they've redone, as a lot of waterfront inns been redone. So they built a whole new section when they expanded the inn on the side of it, which has now a conference center, ballroom, restaurant, and underneath it all is a treatment facility. And they clarify the water and they pump it out to the underneath 2 parking lots, pretty big pump out areas. But that area itself, I think there's it's a 100-room inn, has a conference center, they have weddings there, and they have 100 timeshare condominiums attached to this whole system. And the impressive part is that when you're above it, you can't tell what's underneath you. So when we go up there, and when Richard has his camera going, I'll ask people to try to guess where the sewer system is or where the treatment system is, and you can't tell as far as noise or odor or sound where the installation is. And they did a lot of soundproofing. And what you hear when you're in the ballroom, which is above it, is you hear the air conditioning of the air handlers. You can't hear what's downstairs, which is also a laundry facility. So it's a big installation. It's, again, probably double the size or more of what would be needed to West Cornwall, because you have a couple hundred people there at least at a time. But again, it's a nice place to eat. You get to look over the Sound, and there are people there that, again, you have nuts and bolts people, similar to the people we met in Salisbury, that are used to running the system. I think it's been in place for almost close to 20 years. And they've had some, they've made some changes in the technologies and the filters and things, but and the systems are slightly different because they're right next to the water's edge. They can't discharge right into Long Island Sound. What's odd about Saybrook is that you could discharge into the Connecticut River, which flows into Long Island Sound, but you can't discharge into the Sound itself. So if you're on the river, you can do stuff that you can't do if you're on the Sound. And what was
And is that
interesting,
because of federal regulations?
I don't know, but and so what I'd like to do too is to have an opportunity what we're trying to do is set up a little conference room so we can really have a question and answer period with the people down there, so they would know all that. It's mostly state orders. And what was interesting when I told Steve about this, that he did a study for Saybrook 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. This has been going on a long time as far as the pollution in the Sound, the water quality, trying to improve. It's a big priority for state DEP to improve the water quality in the town, in the Sound. And so they've been under court orders. It's been a long process that they have undertaken to try to meet the DEP guidelines and with a way that's satisfactory to the people in these various towns. They had a referendum, I think about 20 years ago, and it passed 2 out of the 3 towns, but did not pass the 3rd town, so they did not put in a centralized plant. And so a lot of these businesses have undertaken to install systems themselves. The state has financed redoing septic systems and replacing, cesspools into septic systems, they've done hundreds of renovations of individual houses, and they still may have to go to a centralized plant at the end of the day because the places that aren't hooked up to this in the main street of Saybrook is vacant, whereas the places on the shore that have the prime real estate have the economics to put in these systems. But they have a lot of different systems, a lot of different technologies all over that region to, meet state and federal guidelines. They have to test all the water, all the effluent constantly. So it's sort of a good test place because they've been going at this for such a long period of time of what works, what doesn't, what have they learned as a municipality from the whole process.
Is this one of the towns that sought an injunction from the state or the septic people in order to force the project ahead?
Ask for an order.
Well, I think the state has put a lot of pressure on the shoreline towns to do things differently because there's a lot of small houses that were built on the shoreline after World War II, and so they obviously have substandard systems. Also, what's going on is the water level in the sound is they're seeing ocean level rises, so it's a big problem. And they said Connecticut's taking it more seriously than New York State, but Long Island's not far behind on trying to get the nutrient levels reduced in the sound. So again, they can tell us more, I think, and then they've also gone through various administrations there over this period of time. So some town leaders want to, take this head on and have a more ambitious program. Then they have an election and less ambitious people come in there that are concerned about cost. So it's gone back and forth. But the town there has done a lot to meet the state guidelines in a sort of decentralized way. And again, they are interesting people and can really speak to themselves as far as how it's worked, what they would do differently and everything else. But I think right now they're DEP would still like them to have a centralized system because there's some places, even with doing hundreds of residential systems, that are out of compliance. And there are some areas that could have more economic vitality in the town that just can't because they're tied into out-of-date systems. So it's, again, it's not exactly similar to what we're faced with, but there's a lot to be learned as far as the technology from the people there.
May we ask Steve? Steve, do you know whether they are under order by choice, or
No.
are they?
No, they were, we completed the study. The study concluded that a centralized system is needed both in Westbrook and Saybrook and some of the other towns. And at the conclusion of that study, the DEP ordered the towns to implement the study. The towns chose to fight that. They were sued by the state on numerous occasions. The state won all the way up to the Supreme Court on numerous occasions, and yet 20 years later there was still no sewers down there. So while still under order, and they just kept fighting it until finally they had to come to some agreement, and they agreed to allow the town of Old Saybrook to do these quote-unquote on-site management programs and on-site management fixes, which don't meet health code or really any other criteria, but it's a settlement situation. And the repairs they're doing are repairs to simply try to get the best system in for individual homes and businesses that you could possibly fit on the lot. They do not allow any expansion of businesses, any expansion of the homes, any changes to the homes, that type of thing.
Okay, but all of this has been with the state, none of this has been with the federal government?
Correct.
So that would be a big difference for us because we'll be discharging into the Housatonic and be under federal.
Well, it's essentially, yeah, the bottom line, it is federal. It's administered by the state, but yes, it is federal.
Thank you.
Where's the discharge of these places? Into the river that then goes to the sound?
A lot of these are discharging into the ground, so they're going underneath parking lots. So basically what they're doing
At this
right-
restaurant, for
At this
instance?
restaurant, they have these big built-up areas that take the effluent, and then I believe that filters it over a period of time before it goes eventually into the sound. So they use those as sort of a big sand filter.
And that's
after they
because-
treat. So they treat it, put it underground, and then eventually.
But the river's too far away, that's
The
the
river's
problem.
too far away. I
Their
believe it's a
preference-
problem, but I don't want to pretend to be an expert on how.
What's the problem?
I believe that's why they're not going into the river, is because it's a
It's too
ways
far.
away
Yeah.
from some of these places, but I don't.
Yeah, the water's edge, I believe, is actually in Westbrook.
The
But
water's,
I don't even know what town we're in half the time.
Yeah.
The Saybrook,
Water's edge is in Westbrook, and so in order to get to the river, they would have to have a pipeline going all the way across Old Saybrook.
right.
And
right.
Saybrook was not happy about that either. They didn't want something like that, but
So it's more a question of the mechanics than
Yes.
not wanting to deal with the feds versus
No.
the state.
no. It was- In fact, at the time, quite honestly, at the time, it was not clear, and I'm still not certain today whether it's clear, whether you can or cannot discharge to the sound. Because I've had a lot of experience down there with those studies, and the state could never say definitively that you could not discharge to the sound. They strongly had discouraged it, but no one chose to fight that. So,
Right, well, we aren't anywhere near
no,
the sounds.
no, no. But
Now-
it's surprising, a lot of these towns up in this corner of the state get affected by what happens in the sound. The treatment plants in Norfolk their effluent requirements are pretty much dictated by what gets eventually into the sound.
that's where the Houstonic goes,
Yeah,
Right.
right? I mean, it is.
How many of us can do this Wednesday?
Is it, I thought it
May
was 22nd.
Yeah.
You said the
It's-
23rd.
I'm sorry, it's the 22nd, which is the Wednesday.
Yeah.
So who can do that?
I can do it, but I'm going to work from there, so
You'll come,
someone
right?
can drive with me down, but I won't be coming back to.
Okay.
There'll be a hitchhiking back.
You go? Can you go? Don?
No, I can't.
Oh, that's right, I saw your email. I can do it.
I can do it.
I think Lisa, yes, I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Dave, you never know. So the 22nd works.
Right.
Is that
So it
okay
would
for
be
the
good to have a
committee?
head count so they can let the restaurant know. And certainly it's a public meeting. If other people from the town
Mm-hmm.
want to come, just let me know. And as long as we know, I mean, all you have to do is get there and pay for your lunch.
How do you want to organize carpooling?
I think we should meet here at the town hall at 8:30.
Okay, 8:30?
And then you can look, what I can do is I'll send out an exact street address of where this Kohl's Shopping Center is. And then as you're facing the Kohl's building, it's all the way to the left, on the left.
Is that the one we went to?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So it's on the left, there's a little building, it's about 20
So
by
Todd, you've
30.
already been to this site.
Apparently, yeah. This Cole side, not to the water's edge.
You haven't been
side.
to the water's edge,
No.
you've been to Kohl's.
All right, do we vote on this or no? We're just all in
You
agreement?
have that?
Those of us who can be there, May 22nd. Okay. So let's stay a little bit on dates, just because we're scheduling some stuff. And that'll be a special meeting, so will you notice that?
Yeah, we can notice that.
Okay. So on the subject,
Are
let's
you
see.
going?
Next. Yes.
No, I
Oh,
mean.
Ian said he was going. Yeah, we just don't know about Lisa and Dave, but we'll find out.
I can't go.
Oh, you can't go?
No, I have a job.
Too bad.
Well, who's going to do that?
Somebody-
We need a movie.
Hmm.
Well, we can do that with a phone or something like that.
Well, no, I
No.
can give somebody the camera. It's not my camera, it's the Cornwall Association.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
give it to the president.
Anybody who wants to do it, it's very easy to do.
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
You just push record and aim at it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think also what we're going to do is get I mean, there will be a give and take by the people that operate these things as well as the municipality, whole thing. And he's going to hopefully give us a talk there before or after lunch on how this all works. And then Steve can ask, anybody here can ask him questions. How does this relate to what we're thinking about? Because it's a much, it's a much bigger place than here. But I think it would be good to get it on film for people because it's
On the record, yep,
Yeah.
share it. So the other dates we're talking about are a informational, town-wide informational meeting. And tentatively chosen the last Friday in June for that. Now that'll be several weeks after our June 11th meeting. So, and my hope with that June 11th meeting is for us to actually submit a recommendation, which I've been talking about via email with y'all, to the selectmen, so that at that informational meeting, town informational meeting, we'll be able to say with some clarity and decisiveness where we're at in this whole process as we hand this over to the selectmen to take it to the next step. So June 28th is a Friday. Do you have a time that you think you
Probably
have these kind of things?
7:30, 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock, there'll probably be, there'll be a lot of, there'll be.
And the hope is
a brief presentation and plenty of time for questions, so.
Right. The hope is that this is a really well-attended meeting, a town-wide, very well-attended meeting. So we'll need a big venue
Right, and
that we're comfortable with.
and Hugh Cheney's writing an article for the Chronicle, so again, it'd be good to get a lot of publicity. And the thought too is this would be an informational meeting.
Right.
And the following month have a town meeting, but that would give us time to meet some of those concerns before the town meeting.
And the town meeting is actually, will be a setting where there will be a vote.
Right.
So,
On what?
on whatever the ballot that the selectmen have
Or whatever.
come up with.
Selectmen.
Yeah.
But
So that's the
current-
concept here.
The current thinking now is to vote on, hearing what this committee says, but also to do a conceptual approval of continuing the work of this committee, but authorizing some more engineering to do the preliminary engineering report for USDA funding and solicit other grant monies to help pay for this project. This would not be a up and down vote on the entire project, but it would help us get in line to USDA, who funds a lot of these major projects. And
So before we get too deeply into that, let's just establish these dates.
Right.
Okay? Are we going to all agree that the end of June is a good time to aim for this town-wide informational meeting? Does that work for everybody? Do you have any questions
How
about it,
does
any
it correlate with the
discussions?
4th of July weekend?
it's the weekend before. 4th
Right.
of July weekend is.
And the end of the
actually in
month,
July.
the last Friday of the month. So should we vote on that, or should?
Sure.
Okay, somebody want to?
I make a motion that we vote to have our last Friday in June, the 28th, for a town-wide informational sewer meeting here at the town hall at 7 p.m.
Here at Town Hall. Is this a
It'd
big enough
probably
setting?
It'd probably be better to have it at the school, just in case there's a big turnout. This can be tight if you get over 100 people, and I would hope we'd get over 100 people. So I think the school's
We would aim for
a
that.
better venue, and it is available that evening.
Okay,
I say
I
so we
would
modify
amend-
that to be at the school.
At the school.
Okay?
I
Okay.
second it.
Seconded. So,
So that's the gathering room?
Any
is that
discussion?
what
Probably the gym, I would think, because the gathering room can be tight if we get over.
yeah, the gathering, we
room's
did
small
have
in
a
here.
town meeting in that gathering room once, and that was awkward, I thought.
There's quite a few people there.
Yeah, and some people were way over to the
Yeah.
left. So I think the gym
We'll
would be
probably go
better.
for the gym.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, so that's the informational meeting. Let's talk about
Let's
the,
just be sure we have good microphones set up.
yeah. Okay,
And it's a lot of advertising.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do besides the Chronicle Just,
Cornwall Community Network, you can.
Okay.
post it
Yeah.
on.
Right.
Yeah.
so a
And
lot.
all
That
the,
gets over 500 people in there.
and,
And we can put up some posters the way we do for town meetings, I mean, and we can talk to the papers, I mean, I'm sure they'll cover it. And what I'd like to do, if we can today, set these well in advance so people know that's that. And one of the ideas is to have this like the last Friday of June, so you remember last Friday of June.
Yeah.
And then you have the vote the last Friday in July, so it's a,
Yeah.
you know, you have a month in between to adjust or research or whatever you want to do.
So there won't be a vote on the June 28th meeting? It'll
No,
just be-
this will just be
It's just
information,
information.
informational stuff, what the committee's done, how they got to this point, and, yeah.
so,
Is somebody gonna do up a poster for it, or, I mean, that would help?
there'll be a
That'd be
lot
good.
of, and each one of the
If you do it-
town's committees should be,
Yeah.
should have some discussions about this. We had it at the Economic Development this morning. I mean, each one of these committees,
Well, if we make a
zoning.
poster, I can put it on the Cornwall website homepage, and that way
Right,
it gets to a
right,
lot of
so
people.
we'll definitely get that for you. Yeah,
And what's the date in July?
okay, so the July would be the last Friday, which is the 26th for the town vote. And I'm not sure is that something that this committee would, that would be more
Well,
of
that's
a
again a scheduling thing,
selectman.
but it's more the selectmen and the town attorney would have to approve the call, because it's a little
Right.
bit unusual, it's not a standard thing, but how do we do something that's
Well, we could
clear?
recommend it as a committee that the last Friday in July be it.
Right, and I mean, you've said before that the committee wants to have some, you know, vote on the overall concept. We don't have all of the particulars, but just should this group continue looking at this issue? Or is
Exactly,
it
yeah.
just
We
not
need- we
what
need
people
some-
think the town should be doing? And then
Some
also,
messaging.
if it's a yes, then also, I think most people agree that if we can get grants to pay for it as opposed to tax dollars, that's a good thing. People may not agree on a lot of things, but if there is grant money out there, I would like to spend a bunch of time after July trying to get that grant money out there so we can really get a clear picture of what it would cost the town.
Okay. So should we make a motion on the
Sure.
28th? You're very
I'll be
good at this.
happy to make a
Are
motion.
you setting
So-
the date for the town
Well,
meeting?
we're not setting the date. We're making a recommendation. You guys will do the
I would
date
just be
setting.
reluctant to post both of those as absolute dates. The first one's absolute,
Right,
because that's information.
right.
But town meetings always have a way of,
Yeah.
something
No,
gets
we
delayed,
can't, we don't have any
the motion, the
authority to set a
the
date.
attorney, what happens at the informational meeting. A tentative,
Well, that's for you
that
guys
was-
to talk about.
I understand, but that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. I'd be careful
But
about
it's-
strongly advertising both of them.
Well, we're not gonna advertise the town
Well,
vote. We'll just
promoting
advertise the
it.
information.
One is strongly set as June 28th.
Yeah, yeah,
Just the July one I would call tentative.
right.
We'll know in June what we're doing in July.
Right.
Sure, sure. But I mean, we can do this next meeting too, but
No, no, I
we'd
don't
like
have a
to.
problem with you making a motion and doing it, but I would
Okay.
call the second one tentative only because,
Richard, we have no statutory standing, so anything we do doesn't really matter because it's all in your hands anyway, so. I think
Purely a
it's really
recommendation.
well,
Not a big deal.
it does matter. I wouldn't say it doesn't matter.
Okay.
It does enter into it.
So perhaps you would
Shall I
put in
go
a
for it?
tentative in your,
I would like to
Motion.
make a
It's how it's
motion
worded is important.
that we have a tentative date of the last Friday in July, which is July 26th, for a town meeting called by the selectmen for a potential vote on going forward or not with the sewer for West Cornwall.
I don't think that's really what it's about. Gordon has said it's about funding.
It's about two things. One is to apply for grants, which I think is pretty straightforward. The other thing is to try to get some sense of the community whether the town should continue to investigate this proposal. It's not an up and down final vote on the project because the project hasn't been finalized, but I think Todd and other members have said they want some sort of approval of the town to continue exploring the work. So whatever, and again, we
give
have
it-
to
yes.
work on how do we say that clearly.
You don't
But-
think that that would be the outcome of the June meeting?
Well, I think we,
We'll,
again,
we'll get some feedback, and as Richard said, it may impact whether or not and when the town vote is
but again,
set,
you look at a
date-wise.
couple of things too, that to publicize, the reason why we're talking so far ahead is, according to the town survey, the way most people learn about information in the town is the Chronicle, so we have to be ahead of time
yeah.
and to do stuff, and I think that's why we have to decide things by the middle of June, what we're doing in July, because we have these timeline things, and I think one of our goals is to get more information out there as much as we can ahead of things, but it's hard to work 6 weeks ahead of things, but that's, again, I think if we'll be talking about this in May and early June before we set it, but I'd like to, again, let people know what we're thinking of doing and
Yep.
As much
So
ahead
can
as
you
it-
read back that motion?
It's changed.
Yeah.
Priscilla made the motion for a tentative date of July 26th for a town meeting for a sense of the town's approval or not. Is that what
Of
it
a
is?
sewer system.
Of a sewer system, okay.
Well, I think
In
you say
West
a sense of
Cornwall.
the town.
What's that?
I think you say a sense of the town or something like that. We're not saying this is the ultimate.
Or a sense of,
Total.
just say for a sense
The
of.
sense of the town, though, I mean, people sort of know what that means as opposed to a definite, we will do this if you vote yes.
Right, so just say a sense of the town, period?
Yeah, sense of the
Oh,
town.
on the sewer system.
issue, and then
Oh, okay.
applying for grants to,
To gauge the sense of the town, of the
Okay.
town's position about a community septic in West Cornwall.
Okay, then can we have a rereading of what
Yeah,
the
yeah.
motion is for the June meeting?
Yeah, now, to be followed by a vote, correct, at that July meeting? Oh, wait, you're talking about the June meeting?
Well, I want to know the difference
June meetings.
between the June and July
Done, okay.
the
motions.
June meeting would be a public information meeting without a vote, so that we have a chance to hear people's questions and really present a lot of the background information, which will also be presented before a July vote. But it also is the July meeting will be somewhat narrower focus because you generally focus in on the called purpose of the meeting. And again, that's somewhat different. We're starting from really square one in June. Hopefully we'll be starting from square two in July. So a little more detailed and you can have a vote for the difference. But again, because this is a complicated issue, there's a lot of facets, I think it's important to take these small steps on our way to decision, and that's what we're doing.
You want to read that
Yeah.
one more time?
The July one?
Yeah.
Okay, Priscilla made the motion for a tentative date for July 26th town meeting to gauge the sense of the town's position on a septic system and funding, followed by a vote.
Okay. And you're,
Yeah, I would put grants in there.
Okay.
That's really what we're talking about.
Instead of funding?
Is authorizing the town to pursue grants. We're not talking other than some fairly modest engineering money, spending significant town dollars at this point.
we're going to have
talking
to
about-
tighten this language
Yeah,
up
and we can-
to get something we can vote on.
To pursue
Right.
grants.
Okay,
We
so
can-
let's make an effort to,
So those are the two
Tighten it up.
components, basically a straw vote on the concept of a community system in West Cornwall and authorizing some more money to apply for grants. Those are the two parts of
there'll be a two-part.
the motion.
You want two motions, you think, or? two-
No, I mean, it's
two
one
parts
vote,
to
it's
this
gonna be
motion.
yes, which is two things.
Okay, to gauge a sense of the town's position on the septic system and authorizing the town to pursue grants, followed by a
For
vote.
funding.
For funding, followed by a vote. Pursue grants.
I don't think you need followed by a vote, do you?
Well, there needs to be a clear indication of what the
Well,
majority position is.
Yeah, I agree with that,
So
but I
that a
mean,
vote's the only way to do this.
isn't that what you're proposing in the motion? So you move that,
What's the writing?
Well, except that you can talk the thing in circles as we have seen. Proven, right. And at some point, we're looking for,
Yeah. It doesn't
A
be
problem.
followed by it, I mean, the way you gauge this budget, eventually the motion will be called and people will vote yes or no on the basic idea
at that meeting.
at that meeting. Yeah.
And who's
Who's eligible? to vote?
moving
What?
making a motion? Who's making a
Well, it'd
motion?
be upon, because we're spending money, it'd be upon the recommendation of the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen to spend an amount.
They'll
of
be
money.
at that meeting?
Oh, they'll be at meetings before that.
No, I'm talking about the second meeting, that
Tom,
town meeting.
The call.
Yes.
The call, which is written by the attorney, it is the motion. That is the
The
motion.
call for that July
Right.
26th meeting.
Correct.
It'll be
Okay.
something.
That is the motion that
Okay.
is voted on, and that's why the wording of the call is critical.
Okay, okay.
And it's
So
something
that'll-
other-
that'll be
it-
worked out
It
in a...
basically, shall the town do this?
Gotcha, okay. So yeah, we don't
Yes or
need
no.
to talk about a vote then in this,
Okay, so,
in our recommendation.
okay,
So,
okay.
all right, once more with Gus.
Okay, yeah. Priscilla made the motion for a tentative date of July 26th for a town meeting to gauge the sense of the town's position on a septic system and authorizing the town to pursue grants for funding.
Sounds good to me. Have we had enough discussion about this, or?
you know, if you just do it to gauge a sense of the town, a sense of the town on this issue, as Gordon said, you don't need anything more than that. And then B, expenditure of funding to examine grant availability. So it'd have an A and a B part. Right?
Right, but it'd be probably one vote, if you're in favor of moving forward with.
Well, that's the
both.
call part of this.
Yeah.
Then. We're just
We can
talking
work it out.
about
I
what we
don't think
need
we'll get something.
to vote on for a
The
recommendation.
sense of the
Yeah,
sense
oh,
of
we
the
can-
town. Just think it's
We'll work
cleaner if you have the 2 points,
I hear you.
Okay.
2
Yep.
bullet points.
Yep.
I have an editor.
Can you do it again? I would do it for you, but I can't read it, so.
Okay, Priscilla made the motion for a tentative date of July 26th for a town meeting to A, gauge the sense of the town to a septic system, and B, the authorizing the town to pursue funding, the expenditure of funding.
Uh, No, you said it very well, the B part of this.
Yeah.
Say it again, if you can remember.
How,
To authorize the town to spend,
To pursue grants, or not.
to pursue grants.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, to pursue grants.
Why do you need A?
Okay, there isn't a public portion of this yet. I'm sorry. That's the way.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
so Joanne, what was B again? Yeah.
To pursue, to expend
Yeah.
funds to pursue
Mhm.
Sources to pursue
grants,
potential grant
funding.
Right.
grant sources.
Sources of potential.
Especially the
grants.
USDA.
And I would just add, you said septic system?
Yeah, sewage.
I would say community septic
West
system
Cornwall
for
somewhere.
West Cornwall. Okay. Okay. want to read it one more time and we'll maybe vote on it?
Okay. Priscilla made the motion for a tentative date of July 26th for a town meeting to get to gauge the town's, gauge a sense of the town's position on a community septic system for West Cornwall, and B, to
expend funds.
expend funds to pursue sources of potential grants.
Okay,
Fine.
that fits the bill?
Okay.
All right. Any more
I second.
discussion? Any more discussion on this? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's better. All right, so we have dates, things to do, recommendations. So another element on this agenda is the Pink House, which has become yet another potential siting that we should have some discussion about, seeing that we've...
Well, I mean, it's for sale, there may be people buying it, and those people may be, as the current owners have offered that as a potential site, that may be in the future one of the sites to consider. I think part of the reflection on last meeting's minutes were that pumping the effluent up a hill, down the road, whenever we do basically a pump system is gonna add probably 50% of the cost of the system. So I asked Steve to start, thinking about different, I don't think we've ruled in or out any sites, but that's one thing that's gonna happen, is trying to evaluate what some of the sites are. And
But
that
Gordon,
is
you
one of the
just said
sites-
that was a 50% increase, as I remember that statistics, when I moved to zero, the wrong place, that it was a $300,000 difference in the variable expenses between the most expensive and the cheapest. That was less than 5% of the overall cost.
I thought it was $1 million.
Well, what
It was 300,000.
my recollection was that a site that doesn't have to be pumped was roughly 4 million, and a site that had to be pumped was roughly 6 million. Again, I don't really have those numbers to bear, but I think Steve is here, maybe. he can give us some
Steve is, want to speak to this for sure.
If I may just say one thing about the Pink House,
Yes,
now yellow.
yes.
I do believe there is an offer in on it, and I'm not conversant with all the details because I am not the broker involved, but my guess is that the people that think they're buying it now, I don't think are going to want to have anything other than what they need to have there. So
But again, I think
until that's,
well, it's like somebody supposedly bought the castle until the deeds get filed.
Yeah.
I think it's all premature.
yeah,
So it's all hypothetical at this point, who's gonna buy, what they want, stuff like that. But the main thing is gravity systems versus pump systems.
right.
What are the sites? And again, it's still an open question at this point.
So should we
Steve-
authorize Steve to do a study of that setting?
Well, until we hear definitely, I mean, the current owner says we could look at that, but if it's for sale, there's a new owner, then obviously the new owner gets to decide whether that's something they consider or not. And until the deeds are filed, I think it's just, what were your general
Unnecessary.
thoughts?
So shelve the idea for the
Well,
moment?
what were your general thoughts on costs in,
Well, the preliminary estimate, the latest one for the bend, for example, was total cost with all kinds of contingencies and everything else, really conservative, was 4.7. And going to the north property, which was to the north, the larger part, was 6.5. It's almost $2 million more.
$2 million more.
North on River Road?
It could have, yeah, the CLMP property
Right.
down.
And what was the Hellman property?
Right,
The
yeah.
Hellman was somewhere between.
Yeah.
That was 6.1.
And could it be assumed that a Pink House would be like the bend,
Less than the bend.
cost-wise?
Less than the
That
bend.
could be less than the bend,
Yes.
by an order of,
I'm not gonna predict that.
okay.
It also depends on how, if that was to be chosen as a site, how is the site procured? Is it something of a purchase, is it a lease? Is it,
Right.
you know,
In terms of its appropriateness from, issues of floodplain and size, and
Yeah.
how does
That
it,
all pretty much works.
that works? Okay, that's enough. of
Is there
that.
anything else, Gordon? I understand you met with the Trinity people yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
So what?
I did, yeah. I did meet with Trinity people who, very positive meeting. I did ask them how's everything going, because they've been underway there for almost a little over a year now, and things are going well. They're booked at 100%, which is great. They're employing 15 people there full-time, Cornwall people. They said that they are in the process of a engineer looking thoroughly at all their septic stuff. Everything is running and flushing properly now, but they are going to do a B100A study with an engineer to look long-term at all the capacity, what they've got there. They are looking at, down the road, maybe expanding some cabins, rebuilding some of the cabins that were up on the hill, but those are fairly minor and seasonal. And at this point, I guess their overall work was fine. They're doing fine as far as their septic stuff, it doesn't seem like, and they have plenty of ground there to go in the ground to their stuff. Also, I looked at a map, which I can bring in, but that site would have to be pumped, and it's approximately 3 times as far away from the middle of West Cornwall as the Hellman property. So in theory, it would be more expensive, even if they agreed to do it, it'd be more expensive than a site that's already in consideration if we want to pump. So, and again, it didn't seem like...
But would it offer an opportunity to put it underground rather than into the river?
It didn't sound like they had plans to accommodate a large septic system.
Did you ask them?
Yes, I said, is that in your, I mean, again, the people that run it aren't the ultimate decision makers, but right now they're set with what their needs are, and accommodating a large underground system, which I think Steve had some idea would be quite a few acres, would take up most of their acreage there, which they are now using for other purposes besides septic. So I think it didn't sound like that was the direction they wanted to go at. How many acres do we think it would take to accommodate an in-ground system?
It depends on the flow, whether their flow is included or how much of West Cornwall is included. But it takes a substantial amount of land area, let's put it that way. There's not enough land down there with decent soils, without pre-treatment.
Without pre-treatment. So
that's pumping again, grinders and pumping.
Well, some form of pumping to get the wastewater, the raw wastewater, that then would require treatment before discharge either to the river or to an in-ground leaching system, which would be very difficult to install there to meet DEP criteria, today's criteria.
Because?
It's just there's not enough good soil down there. Just the leachings. First off, if you're gonna treat like you're talking about potentially doing now for Cornwall, why would you build a $750,000 leaching system? Why not put it in the river, which is suitable for that? Having said that,
One reason is because then I wouldn't have to deal with the federal government.
well, you're not really dealing with the federal government anyway, Jane. You're dealing with DEP. But in any
Yeah, but
event,
you still said we'd need a NIFTY's permit, right?
that's correct. That's issued through
So-
DEP.
Yes, but it's dependent on what rules the federal government sets. And if they change the rules, we're subject to them.
As you
Implemented through-
would be for an underground system as well.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm dealing with that right now on several sites, where the DEP where facilities have permits through DEP, and DEP has now decided to change the rules,
Yeah.
which makes the systems no longer in compliance. And what is that facility supposed to do? Abandon itself? Because there's no way to meet the new DEP criteria.
But
For underground.
when we met with the DEP people, when we talked to DEP people, they felt the most practical solution was to treat it thoroughly and then discharge it into the river as opposed to going underground, is what the people that administer this type of program, I believe, has told us on several occasions. That's the direction of modern effluent systems.
If you go back to our report, we detail, based on different flows, how much land area would be needed for the dilution to be able to meet the DEP criteria for any renovated wastewater that was going into the ground and ultimately reaching Housatonic River underground. It requires many, many acres. I forget how many acres it was, but it was substantial.
But the system you're gonna show us down in Old Saybrook gets around that, right?
They get around it by pre-treating.
Well, we're gonna pre-treat, right?
Well, that's, I don't know. That's the concept, yes, yes.
So they, in Saybrook, what they do is they basically have the same system that's equivalent to what Steve's proposing, but because they can't go directly into the sound, they then have to build these expensive leaching fields to put the effluent in before it gets treated, because for whatever reason DEP makes them do that because they're so close to the sound. Whereas we apparently can go right into the river with this treated, heavily tested system. So I don't see why we would spend a lot of money to build an underground system that we don't have the land to build anyway, because then those systems have to be far away from wells anyway, and especially in West Cornwall, you don't have those separation distances.
Okay, so any more about the Pink House? Any more discussion?
Stay tuned.
Stay
A
tuned.
lot of land, a lot of buildings for sale in West Cornwall.
All right, so the future role as commission brings us to that item D, to a discussion about these three ballot concepts, which I'm hoping to vote on next meeting, and thought we could just discuss them a little bit. And I've come up with these three simply as a talking point. It's a way to begin this discussion. And I don't know how many of you have read them. I can pass them around. Look at them closer. So I'll read them out. Item 1 is recommend to the selectmen that it is our collective opinion, based on our studies, that the selectmen disband the committee because the effort has no continuing merit. Item 2, recommend to the selectmen that it is our collective opinion, based on our studies, that the committee continue to collect data without regard for a full townwide vote at this time. And item number 3 is recommend to the selectmen that it is our collective opinion, based on our studies, that the selectmen craft a townwide referendum that utilizes elements of the committee's due diligence to determine the willingness of the public to support a community septic project.
But haven't we just done that? By setting the dates?
By setting the
Dates
dates.
for the informational meeting and the town meeting?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we haven't
Isn't
voiced
that what
our
our opinion-
individual opinions as to whether or not we even want
To do
it
that?
to be continued to be studied, whether or not we want it there to be a town vote, period, or whether or not, not a town, yeah, whether or not we want to just continue studying without regard to what the town actually votes. In which case, this committee would stay, we'd continue to meet on a monthly basis and continue to do basically what we're doing now. And item number 3 would get some kind of feedback from a townwide vote to perhaps give us a new mission, whatever that might be, based on what the town feels ought to be done. Is this making sense, or is it too?
I think that our mission is to give to the selectmen our recommendations along with the price, and then
Well, I think
it's
we
up to
should.
them to sell it to the community.
I think we should review our mission, because our mission was really much less, let's see here. one. Stay focused.
Here, to examine with this, was it that?
Oh yeah, I had it in that writing. Thanks. Can't read that at all.
Want me to read it?
Sure, yeah, thanks.
Extra points.
Is that, this all yours?
Yeah. Charge to West Cornwall Water Septic Study Group, January 2016, to examine with assistance from Goman and York Group and Torrington Area Health District the current limitations of the water septic systems in the village of West Cornwall. Also to advise the Board of Selectmen and the town on practical improvement alternatives and the procedures to implement these possible alternatives.
So we've done that. That's done. The next step here is for us to meet again after the town has weighed in on which direction they want to take. And selectmen will give us a new charge, us or a new group, a new charge.
If we're not saying something, if we're giving the public something to choose, aren't we? No?
The selectmen are giving the public something to choose. We've presented the selectmen with a pile of information and options.
So you don't see it's our job to narrow it down to a single? I mean,
Well,
what do you think? I mean, is that?
Well, again, we don't have all the data to even go site by site at this point.
Yeah.
But I think a recommendation, I would hope that this committee could come in conceptually. I mean, the good thing about this committee, it is a diverse committee. It's not all people that are all of one mind. As I don't think the town is of one mind on how this whole issue is going to be. But I think it would be good to, at some point, the committee say, yes, we should generally go ahead and keep on examining.
So it's enough
and
if we
doing
just say
stuff.
yes or no?
What?
I said it's enough for us to say yes
Yeah,
or
we
no,
should
and then
keep-
you take
I mean,
it.
generally, you're supporting the idea of a community system in West Cornwall. Exact shape, site, expense to be determined once, we keep on working on stuff. But generally, there's enough research that's been done to think there's a problem that needs to be addressed by some sort of community system. I think that's what it sort of comes down to. We don't know the financing part. We don't
But
even
we
know
don't-
where
but
it's
we
gonna
don't
go.
know
But I
that
there's a problem
that would come
has-
from a vote. I mean, there may be people on this committee who
That may not
that
be
don't
there.
feel that. Yeah, that feel
It's
there
an
is.
advisory committee. What is this group of people that may not
So
agree?
we should
feels to be the
know,
next
I
step?
mean, if perchance the vote came up that 3 out of 9, 30% of the committee felt there was no reason to continue to study, you should know that.
Right, I mean, I know not everybody's gonna vote yes on
So
anything to do with it.
that would be part of
With-
a recommendation, I
Right,
think.
I think
And,
also, I know that, the last town plan said this is an issue the town should address, and the next town plan is gonna say this is an issue to address. If the town doesn't address it, it's still gonna be an issue that
Right.
needs to be addressed. I mean, it's not any great secrets there, we can argue on how to address it, but it's out there as something that the towns as a whole should have an opportunity to vote yes or no. Is this the time to look at this, or we're just gonna, whatever?
Can anybody recommend other questions to ask of the group to ferret out positions that we should know about or we should convey to the selectmen that aren't addressed in this ballot question? So we have a month. I mean,
Yeah, you just want to
June
take a stand
9th.
a month.
Please spend the month thinking about this so that a motion can get made at next meeting, which will lead to a vote. And the other thing I want to suggest is that that vote be a secret vote, ballot.
I'm sorry, you
A paper
can't do
ballot.
that.
A paper ballot.
You cannot do that.
You can't have paper ballot votes?
You can't have a secret ballot. There's a statute.
Interesting. Came ready for that, huh? Meetings of government agencies to be public. Is that a sentence? Meetings of government agencies to be public, period.
Well, that's.
Recording of votes. schedule an agenda of certain meetings to be filed and posted on websites. Notice of special meetings, executive sessions. A, the meetings of all public agencies, except executive sessions, as defined in subdivision 6 of section 1-200, shall be open to the public. The votes of each member of any such public agency upon any issue before such public agency shall be reduced to writing and made available for public inspection within 48 hours. It shall also be recorded in the minutes of the session at which taken.
There you are, right there.
Not
Shall be recorded in the minutes.
the votes of
Taken
each
right
member of
then.
any such public agency upon any issue before such public agency shall be reduced to writing and made available for public inspection within 48 hours.
It says votes, so it doesn't say individual votes.
Right, doesn't say who.
Yeah, it could just be the,
Not later. Well, this is a question for a lawyer. I'm not going to be able to answer that.
We have time to
I mean,
figure
there's,
that out. I mean, that's it.
you want me to keep this? or-
Yeah, you keep that.
Sure, thanks. Anyway, it's just a recommendation. It's not,
I don't see that.
I'll go either way. Certainly if the law is
Right,
is
but
to,
it seems like it's a free.
but just as a way to
Why,
make
why
people
would we-
comfortable.
Why would we not want to disclose our vote?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, you made the suggestion that it be a secret ballot. Why did you feel that was necessary?
Because it's a contentious issue
And,
and it's
I mean,
we're all neighbors, we're all gonna live close to each other for hopefully many years, and you might wanna keep certain things to yourself.
You know, when we did that study, or when we studied sent the thing out to the people that would be affected by this, that was all public record. I mean, and is there a difference there? I mean, because I knew how, we all knew how everybody voted, for or against this in like on Lower River Road.
You didn't
You know, when
vote, you answered the question.
Yeah, we
whether you
answered the
would
questionnaire,
be-
so I guess, is that the difference, that, because it was just a questionnaire? I mean, it wasn't
Whether you
secret.
supported it or not.
Yeah, whether you supported the system or not,
Right, but
Or that because it wasn't really a vote, this is a little more
yeah, I mean,
binding.
I mean, I really don't see how that's open to,
I don't find, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
I don't find answering this would be set a contentious atmosphere. I mean, it's not
Okay.
like you're voting
up or
for,
down.
up or down, you're,
Well, you are, number one is
well, yeah, okay.
there's no continuing
Okay.
merit. And that is an up or down kind of position.
I think a big question is, do you feel your committee should continue or should it stop? And that's where it's at. I wouldn't blame anybody for wanting to stop, but as I said, the issue's out there and needs to be addressed.
Well, I feel like we've met the mission, for
Yeah.
sure. And
Yeah.
that committee or that should stop.
Right.
And there's going to perhaps be a need for another committee on the other side of whatever the town's
Yeah.
position is. And that committee will have a new mission.
Be pretty similar to this mission.
Well, that's fine. I mean, but let's hear it. Let's.
Okay.
If the selectmen feel they need a committee to help them navigate the next phase of this, then
I don't know why the selectmen would need this committee. It seems to me that the selectmen have already taken the leadership. You've worked very hard, Todd, and I compliment and commend you for all the work you've done, but I think the leadership has definitely come from the selectmen.
okay. So, having said all that, we'll table this till the next meeting and perhaps have a vote, perhaps not have a vote.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Oh, public comment. Now's the time.
Oh,
You remember?
I think I figured out what I was going to say. But actually, I was just going to make the point that with your townwide vote on at the end of July, you had an A and a B, but really, if you just have the B proposition, whether to finance continued studies of this, that basically takes care of A, doesn't it? If somebody's advocating that money should be spent on investigating it further, then that's their position. They're in favor of that concept, so you don't need an A.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think there's two parts, but it's basically, should the work on the project continue or should it stop? That's what it's coming down to. So you can vote yes to continue or no to stop. And there's two parts, whether the committee, but I think that's what essentially it comes down to. And it's, if you want it to continue, most people would say you should get this grant money to get going, so. But also, if people don't want it to continue, then they can vote no and stop at this time, I think. But I think most people at this point would like to get some town input.
Tom?
Can I comment on that, Colleen? In terms of town input, I'm not sure how long this group has been working. It's over a year, isn't it?
Oh, I think we were January 2016, so we're...
Oh, okay, so a really long time. And at the meetings that I've attended, there has been a parade of residents of West Cornwall who clearly don't want this. Among them are people who, just don't think it's a good idea. There are people who are very angry and people who are frustrated at not seeing it to be heard. So when you talk about getting town input, it seems to me that you've already gotten a lot of town input. And here you are, 3 years later, and the new agenda item is the pink house. We thought we had made some progress in making our point that the system should be out of the middle of the village, not in a residential area. And it's like, here we go again. I mean, has that kind of objection shaped the committee's thinking on where to put this thing? And when I've seen responses to the suggestion that it be moved out of the residential center of West Cornwall, the response is that it's too expensive. And my feeling is that if it costs too much money to do it the right way, and to not insult the people who live there and are against it, then the town can't afford it. So just to make, I know you're tired of this point being made, but it is very frustrating because there doesn't seem to be any response in a constructive, positive way to that criticism.
Well, Tom, we had, everybody come down from River Road north of town there. The whole group came down to one meeting to express their desire not to be part of it. And that desire was like, okay, the residents who don't want to be part of it, that's allowed. And now, since then, a year...
They came down, they don't want to be hooked up to this.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't want to be forced to be hooked up. They're not going to be forced to be hooked up. It's a choice that they get to make. And since then, I have talked to a number of those people who have turned around and are supportive of this. So whether or not there are enough people who are against this should come out at this vote.
They will be out.
Yeah.
They will be out in force, but it just would be simpler.
Well, let's find out. Let's get a vote.
Yeah.
Tommy,
Let's get a vote and see whether it's one side or the other.
Is part of the recommendation, and you use the word recommendation, is part of that going to be that the group has selected the pink house, if that works out?
No.
The group has selected Skip Lush's house. Is the specific location of this thing going to be part of the recommendation, or is it just going to be we recommend that we build a,
Yeah,
you know?
question.
There's no site that's gonna be nailed down in the next 2 months, because that would require a bunch of negotiation with a property owner. So, as we said, it's a general conceptual, should this issue continue to be addressed, or do people think this is something we shouldn't talk about? Because clearly, as I said, 10 years ago, people were talking about this as an issue to be addressed in the town planning process. And it's a town, and people that go through West Cornwall see something needs to change in West Cornwall because it's all empty and for sale. I mean, that's a fairly common opinion throughout town, and the town government has some obligation to look after parts of town, and if the town goes vacant, that's not really a great future. So again, and I'm not trying to push a yes or no vote, but clearly this is something that should be voted on. We're trying to do this in a way that does not say we're going to spend $4 million without having getting more information. And that's all, but we're also trying to get some sense whether people feel this should be addressed or not, in a general way, not in a specific way. It's going to take another period of time to come up with a specific recommendation.
Yeah, I understand that, but when you say people are going to be given an opportunity to vote on a general concept, I mean, that at this point is so wide and non-specific that it's not helpful. I mean,
We also have a point, that wasn't our charge evidently, but it'll be a public debate. You'll have a chance to get up and present, and everybody else will, opinions about what's...
Well, I hope that the selectmen, if and when this is presented, will communicate to the town somehow that there was widespread resistance and unhappiness with this plan from the residents of West Cornwall from the beginning.
How do you think the residents of East Cornwall are going to feel about having their taxes increased
Well,
to pay for it?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true. What he's saying is, you're talking about putting it right in the middle of our homes.
I understand, but
I don't understand that.
Well, are you willing to come with us on this road
I've
trip?
already been to Ocean's Edge, and I've been to that restaurant there and everything. I've been there, and I've been to Los Angeles. That's not the problem, is you're talking about putting it, if you could get it out of town where the fields are, and it wasn't by somebody's home, and you could partially go underground if you could, not everything. I don't know how if you could, if you have enough land, but Joanne was saying something about you had enough land in that area to maybe do a leaching field.
Well, I mean, we've debated all this
And I know it's more expensive.
Okay, and so some people obviously are opposed to it being in the village. And some people are obviously for having it in the village.
It's mostly.
And there's no way that you or I know what the results of the vote will be. But if we go the direction we're going, we're asking for a public vote, up or down. Do we not want to proceed, or do we want to proceed?
Well, it does depend on your location, no matter what you say. It definitely depends on the location of it.
And it depends on the
going
individual.
into the-
I would be closer to it than you, but I'm for it.
It's not up at Cream Hill by your home.
I spend more time at my work than I
It
do at
doesn't
home.
matter, it's not your home.
It's not your home, Bill.
Is
It's
there-
not your home.
I've got a question, if I might ask, of just maybe my own ignorance, but is there a point at which this decision-making is not going to be that of the people in the town, but mandated by state DEP, that it has to be done anyway at some time in the future?
Not in the foreseeable future. We've had DEP come out here and look at what's going on.
So it's not going to be...
It's certainly on their radar, what the situation in the systems there. There's many substandard systems, but again, they're pretty, for now at least, they're pretty hands-off
So that's nothing to...
That's not going to happen.
in the foreseeable
They were
future.
pretty clear about
It's hard
that.
to say
So
what,
this could indeed remain a decision made by townspeople.
Correct.
The systems that are functional but substandard. They're functional, but some are substandard.
And so I guess my question, to narrow it down, would be, we need not worry that sometime in the next several years, the DEP is saying, why haven't you fixed this?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they've been out, they've seen it. I think one other piece of unfinished business is we should put out there about the water testing, that we did have some money in this contract we're under now with Steve to do water testing, and we should put that in the paper if there's anyone in West Cornwall that wants to do a voluntary, non-reported water test. At least we would, those services are available, because that's one question that came up from people as far as what is the condition of all the wells in West Cornwall. We've tested a few already, but if anybody wants a well test, it's available as part of this investigation of what is going on right now.
That's still available.
It's still available, and I think that's important, and again, it's free.
There's something too, like we were talking about Tom brought it up about, and you said that you have people that want the system, granted, and people that don't. There's a difference there because, I might want to hook up to it, but I don't want it beside me. That's the thing, which is that not in my backyard kind of thing. But I think the people in West Cornwall, I can't speak certainly for everybody, but the people that I've spoken to, they just don't want it in the center of town. They don't care if we have it. I mean, nobody's against it, some are, but they don't want it in the center of town. Whether they want to hook up to it or not is a whole different question. They may not want to hook up to it, or they may want to hook up to it, but they don't want it in the center of town. You have your shop there, that's true, and that's great, and you're there. But these are our homes. These are our homes, and I question that the value of my home is going to stay the same or go up or down if this is directly across from me or in my backyard. I went and I saw the thing. It doesn't smell. I had no problems with the one at Salisbury School. I can't say I wanted it across from me, though, or right in the center of town. That's just my own feeling. I don't know if it, but the vote, whether you're going to hook up or not, that's a separate thing. You can hook up or not, but do you want it in your backyard?
I'll put it in the ground floor of the toll house and work on top of it.
Yeah.
I've offered that option down the road. I'm not afraid of it. I don't think it,
Well,
I think the value of our properties in town will depreciate greatly as the town continues to depreciate.
I think we're totally forgetting that this is not about the 10 people who live around the possible site, but it's about the whole town and the whole town paying for it eventually. So we're really talking about a tiny subset and not addressing what will be the big question.
Right, well, I don't think we're forgetting that
Townwide
at all.
support.
That's why we're moving this to a townwide
Yeah.
forum.
But we're continuing to
yes,
talk
sir.
about this.
I know Mr. Engineer's about to leave here, but I just had a question for you before you go. Do you have any data about the failure of these systems?
We've talked about this at
And just quickly, though, I'm sorry, I don't recall, I wasn't.
Yeah, it's all in the report. We've talked about it for years. The systems are not physically failing, overtly failing, where you got raw sewage running down the streets. But there's probably over 90, I don't know the numbers exactly, but probably over 90% of the systems in West Cornwall do not meet the health code. That's not really the problem, because there's not really a pollution problem evident, and that's why DEP is not going to come out here and hammer the town. The real reason the town is looking at this is because of the fact it was a vibrant commercial center. The town plan of development wants it to be a vibrant commercial center in the future, and you can't do that without an off-site wastewater solution.
Sure, but I'm talking not about the existing systems, but about a new system that would be installed.
Yep.
That you're describing.
Yep.
As far as those systems failing for whatever reason.
Yep. Could they?
A lack of power
Today,
or something gets bound up in the system.
Yeah. They're pretty much, anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the systems are pretty much, they have to be approved by the state and by the USDA if they go funding. And it's pretty much a belt and suspender situation. They have their own power system for standby power. They have redundancy in all the pumps, and anything to do with the system have redundancy built into them. Could a tornado land in West Cornwall and destroy the plant? Certainly. But that would be the extent of it. The systems are very robust nowadays in terms of reliability and the ability to continue to function correctly.
Yeah, the more
It's a
likely
requirement.
thing would be a flood.
Yeah.
That's probably the
A flood.
highest likelihood.
That would be the highest, one of the higher likelihoods would be flooding.
That's why it's
But-
important it not be in the floodplain.
Correct. And you're not even allowed to have a floodplain treatment system. DEP for the day. But we know that floods are becoming more frequent, higher. Gordon or someone said the water levels are rising, so it has to be protected.
Any other input or discussion?
I move that we adjourn.
Second? I'm not allowed to second, I don't think.
Again,
Okay, go with that.
again, all in favor? Yes.
Okay, see you on the 9th. Is that right? Next meeting,
June 11th.
June 11th, next
5
meeting.
PM.
We will be in touch.
Well.